What's up guys, welcome back to the Commander Slayer. It's Joey here. Today we're sharing with you my Syr Konrad the Grim deck, where I'm going to be trying to build a fun deck on a budget that I can still share with you guys, and you can still really pack a punch in a game and just have a really powerful deck even on a really slim budget. Today this will be a $40 deck tech. It's really cheap. And basically the theme is going to be pretty standard Syr Konrad the Grim deck. We're basically going to be milling cards, but instead of doing it with creatures, we're going to be doing it with artifacts. So we're going to be playing lots of artifacts that basically mill cards. So it's kind of an odd theme, because obviously Syr Konrad wants creatures, but effectively we're going to be milling our and our opponent's creatures through lots of effects and lots of milling effects to make sure that basically both us and them are going to have lots of cards in the graveyard, even through those artifacts. So Syr Konrad is a 5/4 legendary creature human knight for 3 black, so 5 mana in total. And whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Syr Konrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. So basically, at any point where a card is going to be put into a graveyard or leave a graveyard, or leave your graveyard, then you deal 1 damage to each opponent. It's going to be draining our opponents, basically constantly hitting them for value throughout the game. And then we can play 1 of the black and each play mills a card. So if we're low on mill effects, basically that's a really constant effect. We can sink as much mana as we have into that and hopefully deal some damage and even use that at the end of the game to round out a win. But effectively, that's what we're going to be doing. I'll remind you again, but the deck list is in the description. And if you go onto the tapped out link, you can sort by custom or by type. So it automatically sorts by custom, so you can see what categories I've made. So the categories go over in this video will be on the deck list as well. So you can see how many, what I'm running for my card draw, what I'm running for my removal, or for my value cards and my wrap, or what lands I'm running, all synthesized into one kind of column for you guys. So it's really easy to see. If you want to go check that out, just make sure you do, so you can get another feel for the deck list and customize it again, and just take a look in very specifics as to what the deck list is, because I'm only going to be going over broad categories and the best cards in each theme. So of these themes, the first one's obviously going to be that mill. We're playing lots of budget kind of artifacts that can just constantly mill a lot of cards and just trigger Syr Konrad. So we are playing 20 artifacts in this deck, which is obviously quite a lot. Most of them are mill art effects, but there are just some other general value, I believe, as well. And effectively what we're going to be trying to do is play a bunch of artifacts, and then mill a bunch of creatures. So we also have 33 creatures, which is just a great amount, because obviously we're going to be hitting lots of triggers off Syr Konrad, but there's a 1 in 3 chance pretty much every time we mill a card it's going to be a creature, which is just great. Although obviously there is a lot of artifacts, so there are artifact creatures, so there's going to be a bunch of overlap. There's probably 10 or so at least artifact creatures, probably more than that, even probably 10 to 20. So a lot of these creatures are artifacts as well, so they'll trigger both the mill and the effect. So we can really just get maximum value out of it and out of Syr Konrad. So this would be cards like Flint Golem. It's 4 generic for a 2/3 artifact creature golem. When the Flint Golems become blocked, defending player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or graveyard. So it's not the greatest card, but oftentimes we can maybe do some politics or just force our opponents to block with something smaller. If not, even if they do just block it and it dies, it's not the end of the world. Milling for 3 cards with 4 mana isn't that bad. Hopefully we can even do possibly 3 damage to each opponent with that as well, which obviously would be great. And being a creature triggers off Syr Konrad, this is exactly what I was talking about with those of triggers, whether it's artifact creatures. So there's heaps of artifact creatures in this deck. Other cards like Ghoulcooler's Bell, it's 1 generic for an artifact, and you can tap it to put each player puts a card of his or library into his or graveyard. So this is really low impact, obviously, but it can just get constant value. You can literally play out turn 1 every single turn. We can get this going. So it's just great little incremental value like that. We've got generally each people play 20-ish creatures, so it's pretty 1 in 5. There's a decent chance that we're going to get at least 1 to 2, maybe even 3 triggers off this. For the creatures for Syr Konrad, and ping everyone for 1, 2, or 3 damage every time we use its ability. And then Sands of Valerian is much more high impact. It's 3 generic for an artifact. Pay X and tap. Target player puts up X cards of his or her library to his or her graveyard. So I love reusable X effects. I mentioned in my last video the Rego Mono White deck. Go check that out if you'd like to, which is on my channel. Just X effects are great, especially reusable ones, because you can just use them at any point in the game and they scale amazingly. So say we play Syr Konrad and this is already out, the next turn we can tap it for say 6 mana and target player puts up 6 cards into his or her graveyard. It's a good effect, not crazy but not bad. But then if we do it say turn 10, turn 11, turn 12, we can have them milling 10 plus cards, which can normally do 4 or 5 pings to each opponent, and that's effectively what we're going to be doing with this deck, just constantly trying to ping our opponents as much as we can through these effects. So basically playing those artifacts and just using those artifacts for the value to mill them and just get the theme going and really trigger Konrad as much as possible. So then the other slots in the deck, like our ramp, we're going to be playing artifacts again. So cards like Foundry Inspector are great because they really fit into the artifact theme. So it's 3 generic with 3/2 artifact creature construct, and it has artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So basically, all those artifacts we're playing, of those 20 plus the extra 10, so say 30 to 40 each cards in our deck will have a cost reduction from Foundry Inspector. It's just great, and it saves us so much mana over the course of the game, especially when we're playing those 1 to 2 mana artifacts. It turns up to 0 to 1 mana, which is just really great, and it just turns a lot of things mana positive or just mana neutral, which is just really useful for us, such as Soul Ring will be mana positive by 2 mana, which is just insane. All cards like Liquid Metal Talk, obviously, mana positive will be also. It's 2 generic for an artifact does tap, add a colorless, so this will, with Foundry Inspector out, that'll be pay 1, so it'll be mana neutral on the turn it comes out, and after that, which produce mana, which is just great. 2 mana rock is really useful. We obviously have a lot of black fixing already, but and the generic can cast a lot of our artifacts even if we don't have enough black mana, which is unlikely because we're mono black. Otherwise, it has tap target non-land permanent, it becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. So I'm not really going to flesh out the play patterns for this because obviously it can do 1,000 different things, but there's just so much it can do. It can make things just really just change everything up because a lot of our things that trigger off artifacts and controlling artifacts and just everything like that. So we can really just make sure that we can get triggers, and it's really dynamic. Definitely included. It's cheap. It works well. It works as a ramp piece even if you don't use a second ability. And just generally, it's just going to produce way more value, and it's going to do way better than you think it will. And this kind of applies in all decks, not just this mono black artifact deck. In any deck, if you're not playing an artifact deck, you're generally going to find a use for Liquid Mental Talk that you didn't realize. It's a great card. It's really fun. Definitely worth trying out. It just has some crazy gameplay scenarios that can come out of it. So again, with our draw, there's a lot of mono black draw, but there's also a lot of artifact kind of value that we can get out of it. Foreboding Fruit kind of fits in perfectly with both of these. It's 2 mana, also 3 mana sorcery from Eldraine. It has target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life, and it has adamant, so if at least 3 black mana was spent to cast this spell, create a food token, and obviously foods you can pay 2 and sack them to gain 3 life. So basically 3 mana to draw 2 and lose 2 isn't too bad. Divination is obviously really well played in this format. This is sorcery speed, which sort of sucks, and the losing 2 life is a slight downside, but realistically 3 mana to draw 2 in black isn't that bad. And then obviously the adamant effect is what really makes it great because obviously whenever we use probably generally at least 3 black mana to cast this, not always, but we can always make sure that we can, especially late game. It's really not too hard to make sure we use 3 black mana for this and have some left over for other spells. And that gives us a food token, which is an extra artifact that we can abuse for all kinds of effects and just make sure we have triggers on board for having artifacts, which is really useful. Otherwise also we can use it to gain the life if we need to. These other 2 cards aren't technically card draw, they're card advantage, but I've included them because I felt like just talking about lots of card draw would get quite boring because it's pretty obvious. Skeleton Shard's a really fun one. It's 3 generic for an artifact. You can pay 3 generic and tap it, or a black and tap it, and return target artifact creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So as I mentioned, we've got like 10 to 15 so artifact creatures, so we're always going to have pretty much, especially because we're milling, we're always pretty much going to have at least 1, maybe even like 5 or so artifact creatures in the graveyard. And so obviously we're not going to use that first ability, we're always going to use a second. So playing just a black mana to get anything back from a graveyard to a hand every single turn is just great. It's a really useful value artifact in this deck to get card advantage and get those cards back that we milled, basically giving us a second hand for 1 card every turn. Moonsilver Key's a great card. This is from Midnight Hunt, I believe. It's 2 generic for an artifact. This is amazing in many decks. It's just choose like your Solar Ring or your Thran Dynamo or anything you choose to be playing. You pay 1 and tap it to sacrifice a Moonsilver Key, search your library for an artifact card with a mana ability or a basic land card, reel it, put it into your hand and shuffle. So obviously we're generally not getting a basic land. I guess you can if you're in a really bad situation. If it's turn 2, you haven't hit your land drops, you only drew a 2 land hand maybe. Getting that 3rd one could be really useful with this. Otherwise, basically just getting a mana ability from an artifact. We've got a lot of those. So we pretty much all of them. So you get like a Burnished Heart, or you can get Leaden Mirror, or you can get a Liquid Metal Talk, Palladium Mirror, the Soul Ring. There was just great cards in this deck. Even though maybe what we do with Thran Dynamo, there's just a bunch of options. You can pretty much always get something good with this. And then if not, you can get basic land just in case. Either way, we have lots of modal draw that we can really just use throughout this deck. From all these cards and just get extra value out of all these artifacts that we have on board. So now, speaking of value, this is the general kind of theme of the deck. This is what we're going to be doing. We're going to get as much value as we can out of those artifacts because I'm really just using a general kind of mono black shell to just see how the whole thing works, because it does work really well obviously with a powerful commander like Syr Konrad, and there are a lot of mill artifacts that we can use, and just really having fun with the whole kind of off-color ability and kind of tribal that you can get through using artifacts in a color that generally doesn't have that much support for artifacts. So cards like Shimmer Mirror are great. It's very generic for a 2-2 with flash. You may cast artifact spells that ahead flash, so just pretty simply doing things at other turns, maybe using casting cards before our turn to artifact creatures have haste, or just kind of casting things our opponents wouldn't expect, or just kind of getting them out of nowhere with effects they weren't see coming. Just generally, it's really great, especially because artifacts don't have summoning sickness, unless they're artifact creatures, of course, so we can just use their abilities and stuff straight away and get them out on a random turn out of nowhere that no one saw coming. Otherwise, Voltaic Construct's great. It's 4 generic for a 2-2. You can pay 2 and untap target artifact creature. So this doesn't work on that many cards in this deck, but there are a lot of artifact creatures you are going to be wanting to untap anyway. So cards we're going to be tapping for value, like some of our milling cards, like Milliken, for example. Then it would only become basically for however much mana we have, we can pay 1 and then mill a card, because obviously Milliken adds 1 mana. So you could pay 10 mana and you mill 10 cards, which is just amazing value, obviously. Um, either way, there's lots of pathways for this to work in this deck, or we can untap things for blockers or anything like that that we need. It's just another one of those cards that you get on board and really see what it does. Beacon of Unrest is great. It's 3 black for a sorcery. Put target artifact or creature card from a graveyard into the battlefield under your control. Shuffle Beacon of Unrest into its library. So you never know what this card's going to do. If we have maybe a really big value artifact piece, or just a massive artifact that's a really big swing, like some of our win cons that we have, I'll talk about them later, that we want to get back out, this can get those back out for only 5 mana, which is amazing. Otherwise, it can also get artifacts out of opponents' graveyards, but the other really fun use is you can get creatures out. So if Syr Konrad dies, we can basically get him back without paying command attacks, or we do have some other massive creatures again, or just kind of value creatures we need, but also we can get our opponent's creatures. So if our opponent has a really useful creature, or a game-ending creature in their graveyard, we can basically get that out and steal it. Of which happens often, so this kind of scales well with your opponent's decks. Your opponent's playing really good cards, we can get those and use them as well. And this is a great modal card. It can be anything from a win con to a value piece to anything you need at the time, realistically. And as I just mentioned, we are going to have some massive creatures in this deck as the win cons for the deck. So we do have some other kind of more fringe cards like Gary, or also Grey Merchant of Asphodel, or Marionette Master, Disciple of the Vault, which drain our opponents live, anything like that. There are some great cards that make tokens when artifacts die, but realistically the easiest way that we're going to be winning this game is by playing some massive creatures that scale off the amount of artifacts we have. So this Darksteel Juggernaut, it's 5 generic for a star style, where its power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts you control. It has indestructible and attacks if transferable. So this is really good. I use this in my original first ever commander deck, which I can do a deck tech on if you'd like, guys. I'd like to see it, but it's not that interesting. But basically, it's just a indestructible attacking force that's probably going to be 10-10, maybe more, with the artifacts we have in this deck, and just constantly attacking. It even scales off tokens as well, so just basically a massive attack force. This is the same as Metalwork Colossus. It's an 11 mana for a 10-10. It goes Excellence cast, where X is the total CMC of non-creature artifacts you control. Sack 2 artifacts, return Metalwork Colossus from your graveyard to your hand. So we are going to have a surplus of artifacts that we can often sack. Maybe not, but we do have other ways to get out of the graveyard. It's uncertain whether you're ever going to use that second ability too much. Normally the first ability is enough. Obviously, I did mention all the time how many non-artifact creatures we're playing, but we are still playing 20 just regular artifacts that aren't creatures. So, basically, it's pretty much certain that this card's not going to cost more than like literally 0 mana. You're almost never going to be casting this for more than 0. That's what I've found. I think I cast it for 1 once, and that's the highest I've ever cast it for. It just, especially in this deck, it synergizes great, and you're going to have a massive attacker for no mana and get on with the rest of your turn and get extra value and maybe even win the game through other effects, not even have to worry about paying the mana cost for this. Okay, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys like this video. Again, it just like my last one, and I think the last 2 videos, because I did an Ishin deck as well that was goad. These have been pretty fringe decks. I'd like to see if you guys want to see some of the more fringe decks. I started trying to do some with some of my other at the very start of my channel, but it wasn't really received very well. I'm kind of going back out there again, seeing what you guys like, taking kind of more powerful commanders, but building them in a fringe way as opposed to kind of more obscure commanders and building them in a strong way. And so just kind of seeing what you guys like. If you guys want to see more of this, please let me know in the comments with a like or subscribe. Just anything, or if you guys want to see a specific deck, let me know and I can build it. I can do a deck and make an entire video for you, which I actually did for a subscriber earlier on when I told me a friend to Wolves deck. Be sure to go check that out as well if you want to see that. Otherwise, also if you want to see anything else, like some reactions or something, I might try and fit another video that isn't a deck tech and see what you guys think of that. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all